Hey everybody, it's EZScape, and after several weeks of grinding the Duel Monster story mode of Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist Link Evolution, I finally managed to get a new personal best. If you've only ever watched the anime, or you're an old school player that hasn't played in a while, you should be able to follow this video pretty easily. And I'll also be explaining things along the way with card effects on screen, so hopefully nobody gets lost. Because this is the Duel Monsters campaign, most of you will probably recognize a lot of these cards, since the game is trying to emulate the feel of the old school anime fights, while still complying to the current rules. This means that some cards may be updated from what their old effects used to be, kind of like Sangun, who I'll be using in this first duel to collect all 5 pieces of Yugioh. You used to be able to use Sangun's effect of drawing a monster from your deck as many times as you wanted per turn, but after an errata, its effect is limited to once per turn. Along with erratas, there's also the Master Rule, which dictates the layout of the field and how extra cards can be used. Link Evolution is Master Rule 5, but I won't be going into the finer details of it in this video, but I'll have a video link in the description that should catch you up to speed on what changes have been made, or you could just play the game's tutorials. Anyways, now that we have that intro out of the way, let's talk about the run. So the first duel you've been watching is called Heart of the Cards, and as you can guess, this is a big reset point for me if I'm not able to get the pieces of Yugioh quickly. Even with 3 Heart of the Underdogs, which allows me to keep drawing for a long time, it still took me a long time to get all of the pieces. Since I can easily lose runs to both Weevil and Mage, there's no point in resetting since I could always save that time later on. When running this game, it's never worth getting hung up on individual bad splits, and instead just adopt a riskier playstyle to try and make that time back. On screen, you'll also notice I back out of my hand with Weevil after getting forced to go first, and also drawing really bad cards. With only a few exceptions, most of the time you'll want to duel second, so not only do you get an extra card over your opponent, but you can also react to what the AI plays on the field and play accordingly. Sometimes the AI can completely break by having an unplayable hand, so for certain duels, I'll at least wait and see what the opponent does first before deciding if my hand is good enough. Of course, resetting an entire hand can lose quite a bit of time, and you're not guaranteed a good hand after you reset anyways, but you can't expect to win every duel, so a skillful speedrunner needs to fully know the risks involved with each hand that they're dealt. If I'm up a lot of time, sometimes I can afford to reset hands several times, and other times I might be down bad, and then have to invest into bad hands and completely rely on top deck draws. But it's these types of scenarios which makes this game so much fun to speedrun. So I ended up having a pretty fast Weevil in Mage, and going into Mako, I had already made back several minutes for my personal best. My PB is actually a pretty solid run despite it being a 2:22 and my goal time being sub 2 hours. It just lost 15 minutes to the second to last duel against Darts, and I really haven't managed to complete a run since that day, many months ago. It isn't even necessarily that the category is brutal, which I mean, it still is, but I've improved a lot as a player since that run, so it's much more common for me to be able to maintain good pace runs and lose less of them to mistakes. Mako and Rex ended up going smoothly as well, and I didn't have to deal with any annoying traps from them since I took them out so quickly, and I was ahead 2 minutes and 43 seconds going into Bakura. This is a duel where deck knowledge can save you a lot of time. Any duel where I have to deal with annoying flip effects, and I'm also in possession of Swords of Prevailing Light, I always like to go second so I can potentially use swords to activate the flip effects before I have any monsters on the field. If it was a man-eater bug, the monster would just destroy itself since it has to choose a target, but this time it ended up being a morphine jar. This is why I preemptively put all my magic cards face down before playing swords so I didn't lose them. After using Graceful Charity, I have a Soul Charge and 2 Monster Reborns, so I was hoping to discard some high attack monsters with the spell to instantly bring them back to the field, but I got unlucky with my draws. I decided to put Magician of Faith face down to give the Graceful Charity strategy one more chance. After playing Graceful Charity again, I finally drew something: 2 Dark Magicians. I took some time to think about my next move because it's much more important to make a correct decision than a fast one. I decided to Dark Hole the entire field since Magician of Faith isn't that beneficial to me without a Summoned Skull, and the face down could be a man-eater bug. At this point, I could have used my Monster Reborns, but since I'm already up in time, I thought it would be more useful to use a Soul Exchange instead, while I have the Swords of Light up to protect myself the following turn, and use a Reborns as a backup strategy. When dealing with Bakura's face-down monsters, you can either attack with a monster with over 2k attack. In case it's a man-eater bug, you don't lose one of the weaker monsters' battle turns, since the 2k attack would get destroyed anyways, even if it was a 1 to initiate the attack. And Bakura also has a 2k defense monster. But the reason I attack with a low attack monster is to avoid Electric Lizard, which would make my Dark Magician useless for 2 turns, so I just take the risk. The biggest reason this duel went so well is because having Swords of Light in play the entire time makes it so Bakura can't use Change of Heart to crash the Dark Magicians into each other, and the worst thing he can do with it is steal the Magician and tribute it for Earl of Demise, which only has 2k attack, so this duel is really safe for this reason. Right after Bakura, we then have to deal with Panic, and there are 2 ways I can play this duel. Either play aggressive and deal with his traps and hopefully overpower his monsters, or play defensively and use chip damage methods like Catapult Turtle combined with Burning Land. An aggressive playstyle can save a lot more time here, and since he only played a 1200 attack monster, I decided to crash into his panda to manipulate the AI into wasting a Mirror Force. Since I have Swords of Light, I can play somewhat risky since he can't attack me directly. I then put out Karibo for an easy tribute monster for later on. Unfortunately, I don't draw any 4-star monsters to destroy his panda, so I have to risk my Curse of Dragon on his face down, which could either be another Mirror Force or a Sakuretsu armor. But fortunately for me, it was neither. After this, Panda kept getting dead draws, and I got through the rest of the duel with no issues. Next, we're on to Bones, and because the split was so bad in my PB, I can easily save 5 minutes here with an average duel. I start off with 2 Graceful Charities, and I keep Dark Hole as an ultimate backup strat. I also keep 2 Shield and Swords because these are really powerful cards to use against Bones. I also get a Dust Tornado, which I usually save to deal with Call of the Haunted. And then I also keep a Poly and Baby Dragon, just because I like keeping fusion draws alive, just in case. Even after using Dust Tornado to deal with Call of the Haunted, Bones of course has Book of Life to still be able to get his monster back, and a Tribute to the Doom to destroy mine. But at this point, he has no cards left in his hand, so assuming I make it past his monster, it should be a pretty smooth duel from here on out. I still have my Dark Hole, but luckily I top deck a Kunai with Chain, which with my Baby Dragon will be more than enough to deal with a zombie, and I can keep holding on to my spell. Then I top deck the Time Wizard for Thousand Dragon, which is so strong that there really isn't anything that can stop me in his deck other than another Tribute of the Doomed. Then I top deck the Time Wizard for Thousand Dragon, which is so strong that there isn't really anything else that can stop me in his deck other than another Tribute to the Doomed. Now that we're starting to get to some of the more difficult duels in the run, I'm going to start prioritizing going second over first, other than against Pegasus, Seeker, and the Bakura duels later on, since you usually want to win these duels as quickly as you can before they get their win condition. The hand I draw versus Yugi is unfortunately pretty bad, but the only reason why I play it is because of the D-Spell, which is probably my favorite card in this duel, because my least favorite cards to play against are definitely Swords of Light and Scapegoat. I suppose you could include Mirror Force on that list, but in this duel, Yugi only has 1, so usually I can play around it pretty easily. So like I said, this is a pretty bad hand, and unfortunately I continue drawing dead with my already useless Duplicate Poly and Mystical Elf Trap that I never use. I really wanted a monster with over 1400 attack to try and trigger a Mirror Force before getting Blue Eyes out, but then Yugi brought out a Summoned Skull, so the only way to trigger it at this point would be to summon a monster with over 2500 attack. I bring out my Blue Eyes, and yep, of course it's a Mirror Force. But luckily, I top decked a Monster Reborn, so I can bring my Blue Eyes back out. Worst case scenario at this point is Yugi plays Mini Guts, which will not only destroy my dragon, but will do a ton of damage to my life points, and the duel will be pretty much over at this point, so I just have to hope that he doesn't have it in his hand. And of course, he has the Mini Guts. There was no real way to play around it, because as long as Yugi has at least 1 monster on his field by the end of my turn, he can just summon another monster and activate the effect the following turn, or just use a Scapegoat and use one of the tokens for it instead. After resetting that hand, we do get our D-Spell back, and instead of getting a second Poly, I get a Pot of Greed, so this hand is already looking way better. I was hoping his face down monster wasn't 2k defense, so I could try and activate a Mirror Force with Ryukishin, but it was a Mystical Elf, so at this point I'd probably have to summon Blue Eyes to make any more progress. And with 3 face downs on the field, there's a pretty good chance of the Mirror Force being there. I knew since Wall of Illusion forced this Mammoth Graveyard back to the hand, that was most likely the monster he played in face down defense. So I attacked it in hopes to trigger a Mirror Force, and nothing happened. So I was pretty certain that there wasn't one on the field. But I don't want to be hasty and play it right away, because I could get Mini Guts again and have to reset the duel. So instead I just keep attacking Yugi's face downs till he hopefully runs out of monsters. The next turn I attack his face down, and it ends up being his other 2k defense. So I'm in a real bad spot for playing around Mini Guts, since no matter what I do, he will have at least 1 monster on his side of the field by the time this turn happens. Then something amazing happens. Yugi wastes a Monster Reborn on Mammoth Graveyard to tribute it for Gaia the Fierce Knight and puts his 2k defense in attack, so this makes me a lot more confident in my next move, since at this point, I know it's unlikely for Mini Guts to be in his hand, and even if it were, the only way he could use it would be with Scapegoat. Then I clear out all of his monsters, and confirm that there is no Mirror Force. Then he activates Karibo's effect from his hand, which is cool with me, because I'd rather him not use Multiplier Detonate cards instead, and now Yugi has literally no cards left in his hand. He ends up top decking that Swords of Light, so we use that D-Spell we've been saving on it, and take out his Scapegoats in the battle phase. The rest of the duel goes smoothly, and thankfully I get out, maintaining some of my time save. Skipping past the Teo duel, which went pretty well, we are on to the next big reset point of the run, which is Pegasus versus Kaiba. This is a big reset point because Kaiba has a much more powerful deck compared to Pegasus. This is a duel I usually go first on, since tuned monsters can't attack the turn they're summoned. My main goal in this duel is to try to use my card effects to render Kaiba's monsters useless before he's able to get a strong advantage on me. I reset out of my first hand, and on my second one, I get pretty much every beneficial effect monster I could ask for. I use Toon Table of Contents to get Toon Gemini Elf, since its effect will allow me to remove a card out of Kaiba's hand every time I deal damage to his life points, which in a lot of cases can be a win condition for me. The worst case scenario here is that he uses Ancient Rules to instantly summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon, plus another monster from his hand. But even if that happens, I have a Snatch Steal in my hand as a backup, which is what makes his hand so good. I attack with the Elf to see if I can remove some of those cards in his hand, but there are two face down cards which could either be Negate Attack or Shadow Spell. In this case, one ended up being Shadow Spell, and then I attacked the face down with Dream Clown to see if it was an Axe Raider or something weak that I might be able to kill, and it was a Wall of Illusion, which is an annoying card to play around. So instead of playing around it, I decided to Snatch Steal the Wall because it got flipped face up after my attack, making Snatch Steal usable, and use a Toon Blue Eyes special effect to tribute my useless elf and the wall to special summon it onto the field, even though I'd already summoned that turn. This is a good play because not only do I have to give Kaiba 1000 life points every turn from Snatch Steal, but this also means that since I summoned Toon Blue Eyes this turn, I'll be able to attack with him next turn. Next turn I get rid of his Negate Attack, and I start sending out my army of clowns with their effects to keep clearing out his field. By optimally using their effects, I was able to win the duel one turn quicker than I would have without using the effects, and also avoided any counterplay from Kaiba. The next two duels versus Mai and Bandit Keith are actually hilarious because their decks are built around specific win conditions, and if they don't get the right cards, are so likely to brick and not be able to make any moves. Mai took a couple of hand resets, but once I got a setup where I could play Black Luster Soldier on the first turn, I just cleared out all of her monsters, and there was no real counterplay she can muster up. And then Bandit Keith ended up bricking completely. This is because his deck is built around using this Mausoleum field effect to summon strong monsters out instantly each turn, so he only really has high level monsters in his deck and can't summon anything without having that field spell. Not only that, but I probably had one of the best starting hands to play with, assuming this does happen to Keith. I got a Trap Hole in case he has a monster he can actually summon, an Axe Raider which is the strongest monster I can summon without using its Mausoleum, and also a Mystical Space Typhoon in the event that he does get the Mausoleum. He ends up finally getting it on his last turn, but it's bittersweet, since my Mystical Space Typhoon completely negates its effect even after he pays his life points to summon. You would think this would be a gold segment, but there are actually faster combos you can get if you use his Mausoleum against him, but getting him to brick completely is still amazing to happen mid-run. Then I end up getting a really clean duel against Joey. He didn't use any annoying traps, and I was able to fuse on my first turn. The main thing that makes this duel really annoying is when he uses Time Wizard, but I managed to avoid it entirely. Next onto another reset spot of the speedrun, Pegasus 2. In this deck, he has strong tuned monsters, Relinquished, Thousand Eyes Restrict, Safe Zone, and for some reason, they also gave him a single Mirror Force, cause why not? The main way to beat him is to summon a ritual monster to overpower the tunes and hopefully avoid Relinquished or its fusion. I ended up starting with 2 spell shattering arrows, so I used one right away so I could destroy Toon World and not have to deal with his tunes. I attack his face down just in case it's Thousand Eye idle, so I can not only clear a monster off the field, but also get rid of fusion material. Also, I want to try to get rid of Mirror Force if it does happen to be on the field face down. Then something I've never seen happen occurred. Pegasus completely bricks, and I get out of the duel not having to deal with any BS and also gold the segment. Following this segment, we then fight Bandit Keith again, and you'll never guess what happens. He also bricks for the second time, and I get out of the segment being ahead of my PB by 9 minutes. Now we are finally versus Seeker, who is the gatekeeper of the speedrun. If I had to guess, I probably lose around half of my average paced runs to him, and this is because he has an Exodia deck build, which can beat you on the first turn. On a run like this that I'm having, it's best to play it as safe as possible and farm for card destruction so that if he summons an Exodia piece, card destruction eliminates Exodia as a win condition. After this, there's no guarantee that the duel will be fast, but it will at the very least not kill the run. On my first hand, I managed to get the card destruction, and he also summons an Exodia piece, which is a major relief. Unfortunately, I didn't get much luck trying to clear out his life points, which is what usually happens. The only way you can usually do it is if you can avoid Dark Hole and Regeki from the AI accidentally discarding them, have Dust Tornadoes for the Swords of Light, and also get a monster with over 2.2k attack to deal with his high defense monsters. Arcana and Weevil went exceptionally smooth, with me just being able to use beatdown strats to drain their life points, with no real counterplay from either of them. Then we're on to strings, which I definitely could have played better in hindsight. When dueling against strings, you can either use beatdown strats to drain his life points, or deckout strats. Obviously beatdown is always going to be faster, but this duel can be tricky, so I usually go for both of the strats at the same time. For deckout strats, this usually involves saving all card destructions to use in conjunction with Morphine Jar to guarantee a 5-card discard with each card destruction to get strings closer to deckout, and usually he'll finish the rest of the work from there himself, since his deck revolves around special summoning monsters to draw even more cards anyways to power up Slifer the Sky Dragon. As far as beatdown strats go, the main thing to keep in mind is not leaving any spell or traps on your side of the field that you can't get rid of, or else you'll never be able to target Yugioh. In this duel, I had to reset my first hand because I didn't have any monsters over 2k attack, which is what you need to deal with Mage, and also strings 2k defense monsters. My second hand had the same issues, but the trap cards were too good to pass up. So I ended up getting walled out like I thought I would, with no monster over 2k attack. Then string summoned Slifer. I used Magic Cylinder to do a lot of damage to his life points, then Mirror Force him on the following turn to get rid of Slifer. Then he gets out of Yugioh, and I still don't have any monsters strong enough to deal with it, but I managed to pull a Mystic Box, which buys me some time. I still have to play around Magi Sheldon's effect, which allows it to keep coming back from the graveyard if it's tributed. At this point, I'm really struggling with not being able to get a strong monster out. I get a Morphine Jar, which gets me a Graceful Charity, which then allows me to put Buster Blader into the graveyard to Monster Reborn it back. But I made a pretty big mistake during the section. I play Robin Zombie, only thinking of the benefit of being able to deck out strings since he has only 14 cards left in his deck, completely forgetting about the golden rule of this duel, which is to not put down any spell or traps that you can't get rid of, and by playing this card, I wouldn't be able to destroy Yugioh. At this point, I start panicking a bit, because I realize I'm going to have to deck him out unless I get a giant Trunade to get my card off the field, but there's no guarantee I even draw it. The worst part about going for deck out here is that I have less cards in my deck than Strings has. You can tell I was flustered here because I end up Monster Reborning Dark Magician instead of Buster Blader, but this is the least of my worries right now, to be honest. I continue draining Strings life points just in case I can win, and just when I thought I caught him slipping, leaving a Revival Jam and attack to finish the duel, it turns out that he had Jam Defender face down, and this was not going to work. Someone in my chat then pointed out that I could win with card destruction if I got rid of some cards in my hand before using them. I was so tunnel visioned on winning with beatdown strats, I nearly didn't notice it. This ended up working perfectly, and I managed to beat Strings at the cost of a ton of my time save, but thankfully I could continue the run. One of my biggest issues with this run was the rock, paper, scissors RNG. With every RPS, there's a 75% chance that you can get your preferred turn order because it's a 50-50 on whether you win RPS, and then another 50-50 if the AI randomly selects what you want. But like you can see with the Bakura duel, I had to reset the hand 3 times in a row because it's very important to start this duel on the first turn. During this duel, Bakura got Destiny board on his first turn, which is usually fatal. But I played it out, and luckily top decked exactly what I needed to win with beatdown strats. Against Odeon, the best case scenario is getting Jinzo right away, which my opening hand somehow did. Since Odeon's main strategy is to use strong trap cards to win, Jinzo negates it entirely. This doesn't guarantee the win because Jinzo could get Soul Exchange from Mystical Beast of Circuit, but this is pretty rare to happen, and luckily I avoided it in this duel. Ishizu is normally a pretty stressful duel, especially when she uses Swords of Revealing Light to stall. I ended up getting a lot of powerful monsters out, but that can all be for naught. She gets enough fairy monsters in the graveyard, in conjunction with Medora, so this is another one of those duels you usually aren't sure if you'll win until it's really late into the duel. Luckily for me, I made her discard 1 Medora from her hand, and Needlebug Nest discarded a second one, so it was pretty unlikely that I'd have to deal with another. Even with Swords of Light being played, I managed to get through easily. The Kaiba and Merrick duels afterwards, I ended up resetting out of my first hands on both of them. The Kaiba one, which I could have actually played with a Soul Charge draw, but for whatever reason, I wasn't feeling it, and I wanted something that would guarantee the win. In hindsight, I probably should have tried it out, but the second hand I drew was better anyways. I cleared through both with beatdown strats, and following this, we are into the Orichalcos arc, which is really where the run starts getting exciting. The first duel is Joey versus Mai, and the best way to win this duel is to play as annoying as possible. I start out the duel with a Dark Hole to clear out all of the monsters, and then Monster Reborn Harpy's Pet Dragon to use it against her. A pretty classic play. To further answer a question someone had from chat is why would I play Fiber Jar face down if I have the field to myself? And my reasoning for this is insurance. If Mai were to destroy my Harpy's Pet Dragon on my following turn, I'd then be able to flip Fiber Jar and clear out her field again and then attack her directly. So long story short, it's just a safer strat because she isn't guaranteed a brick here, but luckily for me she did, and I got through this duel pretty quickly. My next duel against Alistar is pretty hilarious. I reset my first hand and get a second hand that looks much more promising with 2 Monster Reborns. My X head gets destroyed, so the following turn, I decided to just play risky and Monster Reborn it for a tribute for Judgeman, and then Monster Reborn it again to clear out most of his monsters. What I didn't expect was for Alistar to also have 2 Monster Reborns and completely counter me. If you're curious why I was forced to reset here, it's because Cypher Soldier's effect would destroy Judgeman, and the backup warrior was strong enough to take out the X head. It really doesn't get much unluckier than that. Then after 2 deck resets, I got a very good hand, which allowed me to get Tyrant Burst Dragon out. Yet again, I got another 2 Monster Reborns, so I reborned his monster to summon Blue Eyes White Dragon to attach Tyrant Burst Dragon to it to give it 3 attacks per battle phase, and make it one of my quickest duels ever, despite all of the issues that happened before. Moving on to Joey versus Valine, I don't have the best opening hand, but by clearing the field with Dark Hole and attacking with low level monsters, I was able to get rid of his Sakuretsu armor, which is one of the more annoying cards to deal with in this duel, besides the overpowered Despot cards of course. During my next turn, I didn't really have any plays, so I decided to use Sixth Sense, and as always, I gambled to try to draw 5 or 6 cards, and it actually worked. I had so many cards in my hand, I didn't even know what to do right away. First off, I ritual summoned Lord of the Red right away, using the other Lord of the Red in my hand as a ritual material. I then used Monster Reborn in conjunction with Lord of the Red's effect to destroy Valine's only monster on the field and bring back a Red Eyes Black Dragon. After attacking, Valine uses Damage Condenser to get a Despot 4, which with the Seal of Orichalcos can make this monster 2500 attack to destroy any of my other monsters. I then ended my turn right away, so I bait him into attacking and activating Dimensional Prison, which had he summoned another monster, I would have used Lord of the Red's effect to destroy the other monster as well. Then he was left wide open, and I managed to get another gold split. You'll notice I get a lot of gold splits endgame because of how rare it is for me to get this far into a run. Then onto Raphael, and Rock Paper Scissors decides to keep making me lose. It's really important to go second in this duel to see if Raphael plays Guardian Eatos. If he does, then it's an instant reset, and if he doesn't, then I can usually try to win. This is pretty much the exact same way I play the reverse duel of this and farm for Eatos when I'm playing as Raphael because the strategy is so good. I end up throwing out quite a few hands and then settle on one where I don't have to deal with Eatos and was able to get Dark Magic Curtain to get Dark Magician out right away. Once I got out Dark Magician, it was beat down from there, and now we are on to the last 2 duels. At this point, in order to get a sub 2 hour time, I'm going to need some insanely short duels. I get into darts, and the only real play I have is either playing Mirror Force Dragon or using Legend of Heart with a warrior monster for the legendary Heart Knight monsters. But I draw dead, and I have to reset the hand, making my chances of getting a sub 2 even worse. I end up getting the Mirror Force Dragon on the second hand, and win pretty quickly with beatdown strats with no response from darts. Now we're on to the final duel against Yami-Yugi, and I'll let the live commentary speak for itself. Is it plausible? Gold Sarcophagus, level up. If we can top deck the Mage. But even if I don't, I can still work with this. So yep, we're just gonna go straight for it. See where it's at. Silent Magician level 4. We'll get that in a couple turns. Attack the face down with beta, so we can lose life points next turn. Ended up being Big Shield Gardena, all good. Could still be Mirror Force face down, so we're gonna have to try and pop that. Might tribute here, Dark Magic Curtain. Gonna have to play defensively for a little bit and really luck it out. Really gonna have to luck this out. Mirror Force top deck could be amazing. He's gonna get drained from Metal and Fiend tokens, so. Oh, I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. I'll take it. Yeah, I don't think the sub 2 is happening, guys, but wait, he's down to 3,500. If I hit Big Shield Gardena, that's not enough. I need just a little bit more. I need just a little bit more. We're gonna, is it possible? We're gonna take a little bit off here against King's Knight. And then next turn, don't Mirror Force me. I'm going for it. I'm going for it. Don't Mirror Force me or anything. If he was Mirror Force, he probably would have used it already. No way. Come on, dude. Come on. Hurry up. Hurry up. Fuck! Why? Oh, come on, dude. Oh. So thanks again to everybody who made it this far into the video or watched this on stream. Even though this was 3 seconds off the time I was looking for, I'm still really happy with this run, and I'm sure there's plenty of mistakes or misplays in here for people to point out, but that's how speedrunning this game goes. A lot of mistakes are made in hindsight, and the pressure of not having enough time to think about your next move is what makes this game so difficult, but also fun to speedrun. To this day, I've never watched a top level story deck run that doesn't have at least one mistake. What's important is whether or not the mistake is detrimental enough to cost the run. If you guys enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed and turn on notifications so you get notified when I go live on YouTube, and of course I always stream on Twitch at the same time, so make sure you follow me on there too. I think I'm going to take a break from this category for a bit and start running the reverse category, as well as learning how to run the GX story and a side project of Duels of the Roses. That's pretty much all I have to say, so that will be it for today, and as always, I hope you all have a beautiful life.